Welcome to the Esports Business Podcast, where we connect the time-tested principles of business and team management with the rapidly growing esports industry. I'm not Ben Wiggins. I'm Shivneet Sharma, here with Ben Wiggins. Ben, what's up? What's happening?
Shivneet, it's a quarantine world, man. We've got some potential optimism in terms of people starting to reopen certain parts of Europe. It seems like infections are starting to go down. Obviously, our hearts are with anyone who's lost loved ones and with anybody who's struggling, job-wise or has, lost their job as a result of the pandemic. Definitely thoughts and prayers are with those people. But it looks like we may have some cause for optimism. So I'm grateful for that. How are things out there?
I mean, it's been a month now since my county has been in quarantine, and it's definitely weird, adjusting to living this way a bit, right? I mean, I wasn't one that went out a lot. I'm a gamer, just like you crazy gamer girls and gamer boys. But I mean, I went out. I wanted to socialize with my friends. A lot of my friends are, hours away sometimes or 45 minutes. So it's definitely weird not being able to see them and just only talking to them through Discord. But I mean, it's keeping me sane. I have a housemate, so I get to talk to him at least. I know a lot of people that are out there alone. So hopefully Discord is working for you guys and you guys can game together. But let's get into some headlines. Valorant is looking real spicy.
The closed beta of Riot Games' new shooter, Valorant, has exploded on Twitch in the past week. Many streamers are playing the game pretty much non-stop. In a story from Esports.net, a number of pros have even signaled that they'll be switching to Valorant permanently, most notably from Overwatch. This has created some consternation in Overwatch circles. Is Overwatch dying, Shivneet?
Look, I have a couple viewpoints on this. I've kind of been criticizing the way Blizzard's been handling the Overwatch League recently. Their YouTube deal. In light of the pandemic, a lot of Twitch streams, a lot of esports leagues are actually getting more viewership, and it seems like Overwatch League isn't ballooning as much as I'd like it to. Right? They're not handling their online league as well as they could, just because the difficulties of holding an international league, like they have Seoul Dynasty, they have all these teams from different countries, and that's difficult. I get it, but they should really be stepping up, their esports presence. I think where companies like Riot Games, and Valve, and they're holding online events and they're holding all these qualifiers and stuff like this, and their numbers are rising exponentially. Overwatch isn't rising as fast as I thought it would, given how much investment's already been put into it. And I hopefully this is something that, for lack of a better term, lights a fire under their ass. I mean, that's something I'm hoping. Competition breeds the best out of leagues, and I think Overwatch has kind of been the de facto class-based shooter, and nobody has really kind of gone to challenge that. And now we have somebody like Riot Games, somebody that's proven that they can put an esport and keep the esport in for longevity. Kind of battling and going, against the titan that is Blizzard in this sense.
Yes, and I think that this is probably the first serious challenger to Overwatch. Everybody talked about PUBG, everybody talked about Fortnite, everybody talked about Apex Legends, and you were all wrong, because Battle Royale is not esports. And Rainbow Six, I think, struggled for different reasons. Great games, all of them, but the stylized approach to Overwatch, the kind of bright near future aspect of the game, I think is actually a big piece of what draws players and what draws viewers. The competitive experience is good. I wouldn't say great. I do think that there is some imbalance between how the game rewards damage players specifically versus tanks and supports during the in-game experience. DPS players are kind of the stars of the show because the game is really built around controlling space, but it appears to be built around kills. And so that's a recurring issue that I have with Overwatch, but it is still the gold standard in the shooter space, I think. So this is the first serious challenger in terms of a class-based shooter. Having said that, the players who are talking about leaving are not tier one starters. You're looking at the Kefris, the Taimus, the Taviks, all great players, certainly, and well-known streamers, but not Overwatch League starters, and certainly not Overwatch League All-Stars. So we'll see what happens. I'm very impressed with what I've heard about Valorant so far. It's in closed beta, and the beta seems to be pretty impressive. Do you have any early impressions of the game, Shivneet?
So I actually haven't been able to try it myself, unfortunately. I just haven't been AFKing on streams for the drops. I've been super busy. And I've been having to do other stuff. But from what I've seen on YouTube and from what my friends have told me, and it really looks like a clean, crisp gunplay at least. And I think Valorant will struggle with the identity of, well, are you trying to go against Blizzard and class-based shooters, or are you trying to go against Counter-Strike and it's more tactical-based shooter, right? And I think it tries to ride the line, very finely. And if Riot Games succeeds and they kind of pull people from both avenues, they get the CS guys and they get the Overwatch guys, and they get kind of like this mixed grab bag of spectators and viewers, then I think that's where they succeed. That's kind of not necessarily their niche, but I think that's maybe what they're going for. And yeah, like you mentioned, yeah, it would be a different story if Gamsu or Baby Bay or Sinatra left the Overwatch League for Valorant. That's a completely different story, right? That's completely that changes the ballgame, but like you said, it's a lot of tier 2 and tier 3 starters, which affects the scene. Don't get me wrong. We need contenders. We need open division players because that's the future of Overwatch League. So the game looks clean. It looks fun. A lot of area denial abilities. There's no traditional tanks or I guess supports in the sense of that game. So it might be hard for a lot of the Overwatch guys to transition. Tank players like me and you who can't aim, who have big brains, but it doesn't necessarily help us out in this sense. So we'll see. I mean, I think the transition will be hard, but I think the people that do stick with this game, the community that sticks with it, Riot is known to foster good communities, and I think in spite of League of Legends and their toxicity, they know how to run an esport. That's a given.
That I would agree with. In terms of good community at everywhere except their own headquarters.
Yeah. Per Esports Observer, Riot Games has been meeting privately with a host of gaming organizations in recent weeks, sources say, giving the teams a rundown of the esports plans for Valorant. The free-to-play tactical shooter has started generating massive buzz in the gaming world after debuting live action for the first time this week with its closed beta private test, which is available for esports pros, streamers, and media. The game will be available to everyone sometime this summer, but has already nearly broken Twitch's all-time concurrent viewership mark, underscoring Valorant's potential as an esport. However, while some in the gaming industry predicted that Valorant wouldn't get into the esports realm for a year or two after the game was released, sources say that Riot has already been meeting with prominent organizations to give them the roadmap for the competitive side of Valorant. The meetings are notable because Valorant is being seen as a potential challenger to both the Overwatch League and Counter-Strike Global Offensive League. Riot's esports plans for Valorant could potentially make for an even more crowded field of games, jostling for top players, sponsorships, media rights. Ben, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but do you think this is surprising? Do you think that this was in Riot's plan from the beginning? Obviously, do you think that they were going to get into this super early?
Nothing really surprises me at this point. I wouldn't say that Riot is foolish for moving early on this. I wouldn't say that it's smart necessarily. One of the things that I think Overwatch has suffered from a little bit is lack of attention to the tier 2 and tier 3 competitive scenes. I don't think Blizzard has given them quite as much attention as would be ideal. Everything is kind of about the Overwatch League, and it's kind of feast or famine for pro players in the Overwatch scene, which is unfortunate. But to me, there's actually a bigger issue, which is viewer friendliness. To me, the shooter that will really crack open the esports scene will be the one that is third-person camera friendly. With Overwatch, there may be a little too, as much as I love Overwatch, there may be a little too much visual overkill. It's impossible to follow the action from a Genji's perspective unless you're a meaningfully experienced player. And even third person, like there's just so much happening. Unless you've played the game a fair bit and played it fairly recently, you kind of don't even know what to look for in some sense. Third person works pretty well with goats, but it's slow. Goats is slow, and you're looking for tiny little positional missteps and things like that. And it's the challenge is in football. If you have no idea what to look at, you just watch the ball and you can get a sense of what's happening as a completely uneducated football viewer if you just watch where the ball is. In Overwatch, that's not really the case. There isn't a ball. Like you can see you can watch the kill feed, but that's not really fun. You can see who's moving forward and who's moving back, and you can get a sense of the fight that way. But oftentimes in Dive, the team that's giving ground is actually the one that's going to win the fight because they're saving their cooldowns. Their Winston is about to jump on the enemies and yada, and it's going to be over in 5 seconds. And so unless you're really experienced, it can be hard to get a flow of the game. So what does all of this mean? It means that you have to strike the balance between making the game viewer friendly, but making it complex enough that players who grind the game for thousands of hours are going to be meaningfully better than everyone else. And I don't know how you balance that. It's a tough thing to do. Is Valorant going to solve that problem? Is that going to be the game that does it? Maybe. I think one thing that Overwatch did right was it brought everyone closer together by classing out tanks, supports, that kind of thing. One of the reasons the League of Legends works so well is because you can see, like you can cut between different fights, but oftentimes you'll be able to kind of watch everything all at once. Whereas in Counter-Strike, it can be a lot harder to do that. So I just talked for a long time. What's your take, Shivneet?
Yeah, I think that's where it kind of lends itself. I think the viewer experience kind of scales with the camera crew and the observer crew you have in this sense, right? I think Counter-Strike, if you watch it as early as 2014, 2015 up until now, I think the way observers follow gunfights, and stuff like that, it can be, the time to kill is super quick in Counter-Strike. So I think it's definitely scaled. It's gotten better. You can see more intense gunfights. A lot more clutches are seen on camera, all this kind of stuff. And I think that's where Valorant kind of strikes it, right? It's more tactical. I would definitely say it's more tactical in the sense that, there's, like I said, area of denial abilities. There's like scouting abilities. You can have a drone in the game that can look at certain angles and camera spots. I mean, it kind of takes a little bit of everything. And I think the prep work will allow the viewers to kind of understand the game a little bit more. Whereas in something like Overwatch, there's a time limit as well. There's a time limit, and you have to, get cooldowns. You have to push objectives. You have to do all this, and it's super, super fast paced, right? Whereas there are not necessarily what I would call lull moments in Counter-Strike or Valorant, but there's these slow sort of, tactical moments where you guys kind of have to like walk, and you guys have to, figure out what you guys want to do. And I think that's where the observing system will really shine. And that's where, good casters can also come into play. I mean, it's easy to understand a game like Valorant or Counter-Strike, right? I can bring somebody like my dad in and tell him, like, okay, these guys need to plant a bomb on this bomb site, and the other team is trying to stop them, and the only way to stop them is to defuse it or to kill them. Easy, right? That's a quick concept. I can elevator pitch to you in 15 seconds. Can't do that with Overwatch. It's literally impossible. Only thing you can say is maybe they need to capture this area and they need to hold it, and when they're on it, the little meter fills. They're not going to know what's happening, when a Reinhardt hammers down or when a Brigitte ults, and I think that's the issue, right? Overwatch as an esport is only for people that play Overwatch, and I think, like you mentioned, there needs to be an esport that can be sort of always casual friendly, right? Casual friendly. And I think Riot can't do that with League anymore because it's a 10-year-old game, and I think unless you don't understand the Champions League, you're not going to know what's happening. But I think with Valorant, it's a happy medium, like you mentioned, right? There's gunplay, there's slick, clean gunplay. You can understand what's happening, and even if there's like a drone flying across the screen or like a wave of fire or fog, you can understand that this person, if there's fog on the screen, you can understand that this person can't see what's on the other side, right? It's super easy. I think the digestibility of a game like Valorant it'll succeed. I think it'll succeed. Obviously, it's an early take, but like I said, I trust Riot's pedigree when it comes to maintaining an esport. Esports Business Podcast is brought to you by Vite Ramen. Vite Ramen is the world's first nutritionally complete, high-protein, instant ramen with 27 vitamins and minerals. The company was started by twins with a clinical nutrition degree and Michelin star restaurant experience. One packet has as much protein as a 4-ounce ribeye steak and 7 times as much heart-healthy fiber as a regular ramen. Try Vite Ramen today at viteramen.com. That's VITE ramen.com.
Welcome, Ace Nelson, back to the show. What is, aside from coronavirus outbreak and quarantine and a lot of not so great stuff happening out there in the world, how are you doing otherwise?
I'm doing great. Taking it day by day, living the dream as always.
Yeah. To catch us up, let's talk about Philly Esports. You guys are obviously everybody's having to deal with quarantine and, lockdown and making sure that we're putting safety first. But what's been going on for you guys since we last spoke a year ago? What's new with you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for having me back on the show. It's always an honor to talk to you guys. You guys are doing a great job with the show. So thank you so much for letting me be a part of it. It really means a lot. So it's been pretty much right up on a year since the last time we spoke. And we've done a lot. So I think the biggest thing is that we've been churning out events every single month. Since then, I think we're up to 13 in-person events and 2 online events that we've accomplished up to this point. We've grown an amazing community. I have a full staff of volunteers that help me each and every month. That are really dedicated and really commit to what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that's phenomenal. I never expected to receive all this organic support that I have. And it's been really fulfilling and humbling that I've been able to build something that have attracted such amazing individuals that want to help. But obviously over a course of a year and doing these events, we've learned a lot about how to run really good tournaments, what people really want to see at these events, and what matters to players and what matters to parents. And so we've discovered a lot of new information, and that's going to take us into the future so we can actually create and develop a business model that hopefully makes us money. A lot of people in the esports industry always talks about that it's difficult to make money, and that's very true. But we're really excited about what we're launching this year, what we're building to not only continue our mission of impacting players' lives and giving them opportunities to pursue their dreams in gaming, but also hopefully make some money so we can actually hire people full time and they can fulfill their dreams in working in the esports industry. So we're really excited about that.
You guys have really seemed to have leaned in based on the events. You guys are super big on Super Smash Brothers. I think that's been something like is that something that you found out over time after hosting like a couple or 2 or 3 events? You're like, oh, a lot of people play Super Smash Brothers Ultimate, or a lot of people like fighting games, like this super competitive. Like I'm looking at, I did a little bit of research on your website and everything. Is that something you sort of leaned into? Is like, because I remember when we last spoke, you were like trying to do everything. You were kind of doing the shotgun method, as I would say. You're like, oh, we're going to host this, we're going to do this game, we're going to do this game, but you've really found what you've leaned into. How did you go about that? How did you find all that? Is it just attendance numbers?
Yeah, so just like you said, the shotgun method, we said let's just try every game and see what games people want to come out for. And the very first Super Smash Brothers Ultimate event we did, we had over 100 registrations. That's with 0 marketing. We just put it out on the internet and told a couple of local groups. So seeing that, we recognized, wow, there's a gigantic Super Smash Brothers community in this area. And that was just something we learned. So obviously, that's what you want to do. You want to have full events. You want to have lots of players. You want to give people opportunities to pursue their passion. So Super Smash Smash was just an easy game to do, first of all, because it doesn't really require much setup. You don't need the internet to run the game. And there's just a lot of people that want to come and play. And that's what really makes these events fun, is having a full room, tons of energy, and just having people cheer each other on. We did other games. We did Fortnite. We did Apex. We did Halo. And we've done Rocket League, and we've seen that, you know, there's communities for all these games, but it kind of where you are located physically in the country kind of dictates what game is more popular, because the communities are just different everywhere. We're in Philadelphia, obviously, and the population density is a little bit higher here than, let's say, you know, Tennessee or something like that. So you might see a different response to different games. But what we've learned is Super Smash Brothers is incredibly popular and really fun, and a great community. And the other game we've discovered is that Rocket League has a big following, and a lot of people really love Rocket League. But what's really another thing that we've kind of discovered through this process is, you know, we want our events to be family friendly, and these games are family friendly. So it kind of like doubles down on these games have a big following. A lot of people want to play and come out. They're easy to understand, and they're easy to watch, and they're fun, and they're family friendly, which is really part of our entire culture and mission, is to make esports accessible to as many people as possible.
Let's talk about the concept of family friendly a little bit. In terms of the presentation of the games themselves, it seems like most of the esports out there would be fairly family friendly. I guess, are we thinking in terms of like the idea of people shooting at each other is not as family friendly? I mean, I wouldn't say there's a lot of bloody games out there, but certainly Rocket League. I mean, I guess Super Smash Brothers, the violence is kind of cartoonized or stylized. Is that the issue? Like, what makes a game family friendly versus not?
For sure. It's definitely a topic that's discussed a lot in the esports industry. You could argue that no video game is violent because it's all virtual, it's not real. But let's look at Counter-Strike. Counter-Strike has gore. There's a lot of blood splatters when you shoot players. So you could argue that that's violent. We could take a more dramatic example and say Doom. Obviously, Doom is a game with a lot of gore and blood. And you could say, okay, that's violent. But obviously, Doom is not a competitive game. I think what it comes down to when we say family friendly is that there is nothing explicitly violent. There's no stabbing, there's no blood, there's no gore, and the game is easy to understand. You could argue Smash is as easy to understand, but once you explain the basic concept, you're just trying to knock the other character off the board and try to get that percentage up to a high percentage by hitting them over and over again. It's pretty easy to understand at that point. And then Rocket League is just rocket-powered card soccer. It's super easy to understand once you watch it. So that's kind of why we think family-friendly. There's nothing questionable in it. It's easy to understand. It's fun to watch, and it's right for all ages. Where some parents might feel a little uncomfortable with their kids playing Counter-Strike with gore and blood and stuff like that.
I do think there's definitely an argument to be made for the easy to understandness of the game. I can usually tell what's happening in a League of Legends match, and I'm not very good at League of Legends. I've played, I don't know, maybe 20 hours of it in my life, and so I can usually kind of understand what's going on, but honestly, until I see, like, I can tell if someone's like stunned or rooted or whatever. I can see that, and I can see when someone dies, and I can see when a turret comes down. But in terms of like hitting a really amazing skill shot, like, I'm gonna say, oh, that's good. But is it like top? You know, is it challenger good, or was it just a nice shot? I don't know the difference between those things, and I think the Overwatch League is suffering from some of the same issues in terms of just viewer friendliness, I guess. And so I'm not surprised to hear you say that Smash and Rocket League have, and fighting games in general have done pretty well in your community.
When talking about the family friendly, does the communities of the games also play into that? Like, you know, the Smash Bros. Community, you know, they're really, from my experience at least, going to locals and regional tournaments and stuff like that, they're fairly friendly. Like, you know, there's literally a term called playing friendlies, where you go and you just sit down and play with people just to get better, right? Does that take into a factor of like what you determine, at least for Philly Esports, like a family-friendly game versus something like Counter-Strike, which is hyper-competitive, right? These guys are, you know, playing 16, 18 hours a day. Like, I mean, they're going, you know, they care about certain things. They'll flame you, stuff like that. Like, more toxic communities, right? Overwatch League.
Right.
Toxic like shit,
toxic
Nate.
like me.
So that brings up a great point. So I want to be clear for anyone listening to the podcast right now. I love Counter-Strike and I love the gory games. You know, I've been playing them my whole life. So there's no hate here. It's just looking at it from a business perspective. Let's look at Gears of War. Gears of War is an amazing game. I've loved the Gears of War series. I've played every single one. And I never got into the competitive scene, but I've watched tons of those tournaments and they're super fun. One of my best friends is a caster for the Gears of War series. And I love the heat and the energy that gets involved. And I think that competitive sports in general has a lot of that, and esports needs it too. That's its own conversation. But yeah, in Gears of War in particular, the teams are known to get really aggressive and yelling at each other and pointing over the consoles and saying, whatever it is that they say. And it's fun. And I think it works for that community. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we're trying, here at Philly Esports, we really care about the player experience. How do the players feel when they come in the door? And how do we treat them? And a lot of esports players or competitors, they're younger people and they're coming with their parents. And we want their parents to support them and feel confident that what their child is pursuing is a healthy goal, both financially and on the educational side. So these communities of Super Smash Brothers and Rocket League, they are a little less aggressive when it comes to taunting. They might do it a little bit in game, but the community is incredibly supportive. People love teaching each other. Even when they get completely destroyed in the game, the player always says good game. There's always helpful tips. And I think that adds to that family-friendly environment. Absolutely. The game culture definitely is a culture that impacts the way you do the events and impacts the people that come just to spectate. I think that's really important. We at Philly Esports are not opposed of doing Counter-Strike or Gears of War or Halo or any other game where the communities might be a little bit older and might be a little bit more aggressive. I think that competitiveness needs to be there. It shouldn't be stripped away completely because then it's not as fun. That's why we love watching professional sports, because the players get really heated in some of those moments. Hockey, for example, there's fighting is legal in hockey and everyone loves that. But, again, we got to look at the demographics. A lot of the future esports professionals are teenagers right now, and their parents are coming with them to these events to support them and kind of understand what's going on. And because we're in that time right now, it's important to have a culture at these events that are supportive, that are safe, that are welcoming to all walks of life. And if you have a game that already represents that in its own culture, it just makes it that much easier and that much more welcoming. So, yeah.
Have you seen the I guess parents of now, like this generation, right? Some of these people, a lot of the parents are born in the 80s and stuff like that. Do you see like a sort of shift in mentality? Like they understand it a little bit more because they kind of grew up with video games. Like they didn't grow up with the same ones, obviously not online, but they grew up with video games. Do you see more understanding from a lot of the parents that are like roughly in the mid 30s or like late 40s? Like, what are some of the questions that you commonly answer and stuff like that?
Absolutely. So yes, I think parents are becoming much more supportive, especially in the Rocket League and Super Smash Bros. Areas and other games like that. Even Overwatch. I've seen incredibly supportive parents that are just as supportive as a parent you'd see at a football game or a baseball game. They do have a lot of questions. I think the educational pieces are still fairly new. Are there scholarships? Are there degree programs? What opportunities exist? To give you an example, we just had our last event. Unfortunately, we would have had an event today, March 28th, but we had to postpone it because of the coronavirus outbreak. But our last event at Arcadia University, which is a local university here, we did a Rocket League tournament and tons of parents came to that event. And what was really great was seeing the staff at the university that work full-time supporting the esports players and teams there, teaching the parents about the programs that they have, teaching about the dedication the school has, the commitments the school has towards the esports program, what these people did before esports. It really legitimizes the people that are involved and the efforts that are being placed, that it's a real thing. It's not this fantasy thing. No, this is real. There are real opportunities for people to go to college and play professionally or to get jobs or whatever it might be. Because what's so great about esports, just like you guys know, there's so many different things we can do. You can become a caster. You can become a TO like we are at Philly Esports, or you can work on content marketing, or you can be a digital artist. There's so many things you can do within the arena of esports that once parents start learning that and they see, oh, even if they don't become a professional player, that might be what they want to do now, there's a plethora of other opportunities that they can still do, that it's still in gaming, it can still be fulfilling and have a long-lasting career, because gaming isn't going anywhere. No virus is going to stop the gaming culture. We're going to persist through this and be strong on the other end. So it is, yeah. So a lot of parents are actually very like pleasantly surprised. Oh, it's not just about playing the game. There's so many other opportunities, and we love teaching them about that and showing them that, especially with our partnerships with local universities who have staff there doing the same thing we're doing. So it's incredibly awesome to see how well received these parents are with this information.
It's fantastic stuff. In terms of building your community, what is the activity that you feel is necessary, some of the lifeblood of what you're doing, but is not necessarily the most fun to do? What's the thing that you is not necessarily enjoyable, but you have to do it because it's just part of the process. It's an important piece.
Yeah, for sure. I think, we are a business and you have to run it like a business. And the tough thing is figuring out how can we make money, right? I didn't start Philly Esports in the pursuit of profit. I did it because I love gaming and I'm passionate about the community and I'm passionate about what esports is. But there needs to be an upside to all the hard work outside of helping people pursue their dreams. There's got to be something you give yourself, right? And so the financial elements of it are tough. Trying to find ways to make money without sacrificing the culture and the values you hold close to your heart. That is definitely a struggle, and it sucks because, like I said, I didn't start this to make money, but it can't continue unless we make a little bit of money, right? So that's probably the hardest thing for me. It's a struggle, like any entrepreneur in any industry. It's always hard to make money. You need to create a product people want to buy over and over again and be a part of. But my core focus is I want to help people pursue their dreams in gaming and esports. And I want to make sure that if we do implement new strategies to make some money, that is always at the core of every decision we make, so we don't lose sight of that.
What social media platform or online tool have you found most helpful to building the community? Like what's the thing that helped you guys take a big step forward?
Absolutely. So I'd say there's two major platforms, and I'll explain why. Number one, Instagram is by far the best platform for gaming because on Instagram, you can post your pictures, you can post your videos, you have highlights, you have stories. It's such a great platform to interact with millions of people who might be in your local area or might be around the world using the hashtags. You could say every platform really, but I like Instagram the most because of the fact that you can show exactly what you're trying to accomplish. You can show the photos, you can show the gameplay clips, the interviews, you can highlight things. I think that's really important. For me personally, on the business side, I've loved LinkedIn. The esports community on LinkedIn is just overwhelmingly supportive. To give you an example, last night we just did a online Call of Duty Warzone tournament, and it was all organized and all the teams were sourced from LinkedIn, and we had like 60 teams in the tournament. It was crazy. It was super fun. So I think LinkedIn, if anyone out there is looking to get involved in esports and you don't have a LinkedIn account, please make a LinkedIn account. It's great for your professional growth, for networking, for connecting with people. And I've made really amazing connections through LinkedIn on the business side with people giving me feedback, support, referring me to other people that can help. It's been really, really amazing. The esports community is so supportive and loving of one another. It's really great. That's how it should be. So LinkedIn has been great. Instagram has been great, but let's be real. Twitter is just where a lot of the magic happens. That's where a lot of people in the esports industry and esports space talk and share clips and pictures and jokes. And I love Twitter. But for Philly Esports, Instagram has been the best in showing what we do and why we do it the best.
So would you say you're the Philly Esports social media manager? Do you guys have one that kind of helps you out, like volunteering? Like, what are the challenges that you face on social media, right? You talked about Instagram being your favorite. Did you have to do research and finding out like, oh, this is the best time to post, like during lunch, because a lot of people are doing, on their lunch break? Or did you find out like what hashtags, you had to curate specific hashtags? Like, what are the challenges you faced with each individual social media platform that you mentioned, right? LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram, for those three.
For sure. So for the past year, I have been solely doing our social media, and I have gone to classes and I've learned from people in my network about what's the best. How do I do this? I'm not a social media expert. How do I do this? And I've learned a lot about when to post, what hashtags to use. But I do now have a social media manager, a volunteer. Her name is Becky, and she's amazing. She's really taking it by the horns and just running with it. She's doing a great job. I think the biggest challenges is using hashtag, I mean, each platform has its own algorithm. So hashtags, I think on like Instagram are not as effective as they are in Twitter, because Twitter really highlights and has a really good algorithm for what's trending in your area, what's trending in different topics. Where Instagram, you could put like 100 tags and it doesn't really affect your photo that much. At least that's just what I've personally seen. Maybe I'm not doing it right. I'm not an expert. But yeah, I think the challenge is been mostly about the content. People respond to the type of content you put out, not so much content in general. I think there's tons of like Twitch streamers and other organizations that post content all the time. I mean, it's a stream, content. And that is a strategy that if you're just out there all the time everywhere, people will just eventually see you. But that doesn't mean they're going to resonate with what you're putting out there. I think quality over quantity is important, personally. And so I think the biggest struggle has just been, what content do people want to see? Do they want to engage with? And also represents what we stand for at the company, right? Are the pictures of our players happy? Are they high resolution? Are the videos we put out, are they well made? Are they high resolution? Our clips, our interviews on YouTube. YouTube's a challenge. We don't have a lot of views on our videos. Why is that? I don't know yet. I'm trying to figure that out still. But discovering those things is really important. So I think the biggest challenge is, what do people want to see? What really represents Philly esports in an organic way? And, what resonates with people? What do people like to see? Do they like comedy? Do they like heartwarming stuff? Do they want to see stories? Like, do they want to see more female gamers over male gamers? Like, that kind of stuff you got to figure out. But I think the biggest struggle is just creating content that people do want to interact with, and just getting that content on the right platform.
With all of the coronavirus stuff happening in the world, what does the near future look like for you? And if this drags out a little bit, what does the more distant future look like for Philly esports?
For sure, it's a great question. So I think in general, I think this applies to us and to all esports. We're going to see a lot more online events, which I think is great. Nothing wrong with that at all. I think online events are fun. There is challenges involved with online events, but I think for the most part, we're going to see a lot more of those. If we as an organization are forced to like, we're not able to do in-person events because maybe, say, here in Pennsylvania, or just in the country in general, we're still limited to only gatherings of 5 to 10 people, or maybe no people, that obviously our events will probably go just strictly online, and there'll be some logistical challenges there for sure. But I don't think that's going to be a big deal. I think that we will get through this. We will get past this. I think it's going to be a slow progression, and eventually you can get into groups of 10, then you can get to groups of 20, and then eventually local venues will say, okay, we'll let you do events. It's going to be a slow process, but I don't think we're going to be stuck here forever. In the rare case that we are, and let's just say all public events are just no-go in the whole country for a while, then we will find ways to do online events just the same way we do in person, and we'll continue to do the same things we do by highlighting the players, focusing in on their experience, and making sure that people get their name out there, and that we just have fun and we just enjoy the fact that we get to play video games competitively and people can pursue their dreams, and we'll continue that mission for as long as we possibly can, no matter what obstacles are placed in front of us.
When you work on growing your community, obviously, clearly you've put a lot of hard work in, right, over the past year. I remember when we first spoke to you, it was, I think you were hosting maybe your second event or third event, I believe, and you were super excited about that. From then until now, do you think a lot of what you've made is obviously due to hard work? Do you think there's a little bit of luck involved? Do you think that the connections you made and everything that's kind of transpired has been just like, is it a result of like all the steps you've done? You said you've gone to classes for the social media stuff. Have you been vetting like certain volunteers and getting the right volunteers, right? Like, is this all like an elaborate plan or elaborate process for you, or do you think there's some luck involved? It's
a great question. I think there's luck in everything. I think we all experience lucky moments, but to be completely honest, I don't think that the success and growth that we've had to this point has anything to do with luck. This comes back to kind of what we talked about the first time we did this interview, which is like really diving into the entrepreneurial elements of starting a business and running an esports business, is that when you're passionate about something, when you love what you do, it fulfills your heart and your soul. Everything just, the universe starts kind of just attracting things towards you. That law of attraction is what people say. I think it's real. I think once you show that you are passionate about it, you're committed, it gives you energy and positivity. You're so excited. People are attracted to that, and people want to be a part of that because they want to feel the same way. So I don't think it's luck. I think it's the fact that I found something that I am genuinely in love with that really uplifts me and gives me passion and gives me motivation. And because of that, these things are happening organically. They're happening on their own. And I don't think I'm sure you could say there's a couple things here and there that we're lucky, but we haven't made millions of dollars. We don't have tournaments with 500 players or anything like that. It's been a slow grind to get to where we are today. But in regards to the volunteers I have, to the reception of universities we worked with or potential partners and sponsors, all that has come from the fact that I have been relentless because I love what I do. I love this company. I love this industry. I love gaming. And I want to make a real impact in this world and help people pursue their dreams and give people joy in something that has changed so dramatically in a good way from what it used to be in like the 90s and early 2000s to now, which is just unlimited opportunities, and it's just so cool. And so that's what I think. I think a lot of entrepreneurs will say this, that when you are just in love with something and it's your passion and no one and nothing is going to get in your way of doing it, that is the true secret to becoming successful and to having something is you will attract things you need organically through the universe or whatever to what you need because you're in it, you're doing it, and you love it. So.
Let's talk a little bit more about the concept of partnerships. You mentioned partnerships with universities. We've talked in the past about partnerships with other, with nonprofit organizations. What do those partnerships look like? How do they come about? What positive effects do you see from all of that? Let's get a little deeper into that part of it.
For sure. So as a esports event organizer, we started off without having our own event space. Like we don't have a shop or a store. So we, one of our biggest challenges was event space. And I, at the time when I started the company, was in a network where I had access to a lot of local college people, and I would just reach out and call and say, "Hey, I want to do this. Would you be willing to give us some space for free or for a discount?" And most of the time they'd say yes. So when it comes to colleges, a lot of colleges here in the Northeast are adapting esports the same way as they would an actual sport. They have esports programs, teams, and they're treated. They have the same. They have the same. Policies and restrictions and all that an actual athlete would have to do. They have to get a physical. They have to keep their GPA up, so on and so forth. And so when we reach out to these colleges and say, "Hey, we see you have a esports program. We'd love to do an event with you." They hop on that opportunity because it's new, it's exciting, and they want people to come and be involved in it because it's new. So those kind of partnerships have been very easy because they're already interested in what we're doing and they want to continue that on in their own organization. When it comes to sponsors or outside entities, that's been a little bit more difficult because everybody wants to make money. So you have to prove that you can help them make a little bit of money. But for the most part, like I said, it all kind of ties back to who I am and how much love and passion I have for this and the team I have. We're really honest. We just say, "Hey, listen, this is what we're trying to do. These are the statistics. This is the data we've collected over the last year. We'd love for you to be a part of it. Will you be willing to sponsor? Will you be willing to have a booth at our event? Will you be willing to give us some space at your college for us to run an event?" And I think people respond and appreciate that honesty and that transparency. And they say, "Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to be involved." So it's always, it is a challenge to find new partners and new relationships, but it's networking. And, it's a skill that takes time to flex and learn and get better at. But again, when you're doing something that has a true mission behind it, when you're doing it for the right reasons, people see that, people resonate with that, and they want to be involved.
You said you've networked a lot, and I'm assuming you've networked with people that are, much bigger than you and also much smaller than you. What do you see for somebody that's, up and coming that doesn't necessarily want to be a player, but, wants to, I guess, in your space, be a TO or host a gaming event, an esports event, business, or like, what do you kind of see a lot of these people are missing, and what do you see a lot of people are doing right? Like, what do you see based on what you've seen and based on what other people have told you that are both bigger and smaller than you? Like, what are you looking for in eventually for your paid employees or even your volunteers right now? Like, what is something that you kind of, other than passion, of course?
Right. This is a great question. So let me start with what I think people are doing right. I said this before. I think everyone in the esports industry is really supporting each other, and they're helping each other out, and they're not putting each other down. It's not as competitive as maybe some other industries, because we have to be united for this to work, right? If we're divisive and we're putting each other down and we're trying to find ways to ruin someone's business or something, then this isn't going to work. It's going to put a bad stain on the industry, and people aren't going to want to be involved. So what we do right is that we do support each other. We do call out people that are doing the wrong thing for sure, but we support each other, we uplift each other, and we help out any way we can. So that's the one thing that everyone in the esports industry, no matter what role they have, is doing right. What people could be doing more of, or not doing as well, I would say it's just the kind of content they're creating. Some people aren't allowing themselves to be as accessible as they possibly could, or really showing the impact that their efforts are having on people's lives. I think that's important. I think it's important to show how we're changing people's lives through esports, which is why we wanted to do a charity, which we are going to do, even though it's postponed, doing a charity event for Gamers Outreach, which is a national nonprofit that helps put mobile gaming carts into hospitals so kids have something to do while they're there for long stays. And that's an amazing nonprofit. I think stuff like that needs to be highlighted more than let's say a kid that wins a lot of money. I think that's great, but esports isn't really about the money. It's not about some individual winning a large sum. I mean, that's great, but it's about the impact we're having on people's lives in such a positive way. And I think that content creators, casters, TOs, companies like Blizzard and Riot and all these other big entities, like, game developers, we need to focus on the impact we're having and the positive impact we're having, and really creating a resonance chamber of impact, positivity, and uplifting people. Gaming, just to give a great example, there's people that have major disabilities that have controllers specifically designed for them. And because of that, they can now play the game just as well and efficiently as someone with no disability. That's amazing. What other sport in the world do you see that, except for, maybe the Special Olympics sports that they do? But those people can't play in the professional sports, but in gaming, now they can. And that's incredible. And you don't see that anywhere else. And so I think stuff like that needs to be highlighted more. That needs to be included more in the things that we do each month. And I think that people who have the voice and have the audience to really spread those messages should be doing that more.
Love that answer. Ace, how can our listeners keep up with what you're doing? How can they follow Philly Esports? Where should they find you?
Absolutely. So if you want to learn more about Philly Esports or get involved in any way, we're on social media on every platform, just at Philly Esports. Our website is phillyesports.net, and through the website, you can get to any of our social media platforms. Please reach out. We're always looking for volunteers and people to get involved. Even if you don't live in the Philadelphia area, we have tons of work to do that doesn't need you to be physically here. We can do it through the internet or online. We love to get as many people involved as possible. So if you're looking to be involved, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to connect with you. Just reach out and say hi.
Perfect. Thanks so much for taking the time. We really appreciate you. We really appreciate you taking the time to come visit with us again.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's an honor. I love talking to you guys, and keep charging on with the podcast. It's a great show. Don't ever quit. Let's get this content out there and show what people are doing around the world with esports.
Make sure to check back every week for more episodes. If you have a moment to subscribe to the pod on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review or offer us some feedback, we'd greatly appreciate it. We'll also be reading reviews live on the show from this point forward. We love positivity, but we also want to make the show the best it can be. We've also put links to our Discord, Twitter, Facebook, and website in a shortened link in the show post. We appreciate you listening. Stay gold, everyone.